Hello all. I wanted to speak on atheism. What is atheism? Well, atheism is like, um, atheism is actually against God. An actual there is no God. Now, the idea or the belief that there is no God. Now, to say that someone's not sure that there's a God, that's not atheism. Because atheism requires you to believe absolutely that there is no God. Whereas Gnosticism, or being agnostic, not Gnosticism, but being agnostic, is kind of not knowing, knowing, Gnostic and not knowing, and Gnostic, agnostic, not Gnostic, but agnostic. So, so that's not being sure whether there's a God or not. And so to say that anybody that doesn't believe that there is a God, or that's unsure that there's a God, is an atheist is not true. No, because I would say 99.9% of the people, if you ask them that don't believe that there is a God or don't know whether there's a God, will tell you that, well, they're not atheists, they're just agnostic. They don't know whether there's a God or there isn't a God. Well, nobody can prove that, or they don't have faith that there is a God. But those who are theists, believe that there is a God, and those people who believe who have a belief that or a faith that there is no God are atheists because they don't believe that there's a God. In a lot of circles, they're not really honest. People aren't honest in either direction. Most people who are atheists, true atheists, are people who are against God. They're against the idea of God. They have a hatred towards the idea of God. They vehemently um, um, don't like the idea. A lot of people who are atheists that are not of this group of people who are against God are more agnostic, or because they really don't know. And if anybody's honest with themselves, they can't really prove anything either way. So to be an atheist, you have to take that one step further to say that I have faith that there is no God. I believe that there is no God. And that's your conviction. Just like to be a theist is to say, I believe that there is a God. But to be agnostic is not to go either way. It's to say that I don't know whether there is a God or whether there isn't a God. Now, let me talk about atheism. Atheism, um, atheism, a lot of people will come up, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and they'll start throwing all these things at you. Now, a lot of these tactics are actually organized atheism. These atheists use a book by Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. They use the idea of being in your face to be, if you read the book, very belligerent. So there's a whole bunch of belligerent atheists out there. And then there's the atheists that are so belligerent and hate the idea so much and want to prove so much that there isn't a God that they will actually try to proselytize people who do believe that there is a God. And then there's also people who are vehemently trying to proselytize people to become whatever religious faith it is. And I say that, or whatever denomination it is, because denominations like Jehovah's Witnesses, like even born-again Christians, are out there proselytizing people all the time. They're trying to win converts to their side, and they're trying to, it's like this war between ideas, and it's a religious idea, because these type of Alinskyite type atheists are out there with everything they possibly can to prove a point and to try to make people come over to their side. Now, to take a look at the history of atheism, it goes back pretty far. You can read about a guy named Hegel, way back. Now, what was going on in the world back then, and even before that, even since the beginning of time, but we'll just take it back to people like Lalanier, which actually wrote the kind of idea that we got John Lennon from. Imagine all the people, no heaven, no heaven. Imagine all this came from many years ago. Leninism, Marxism, which basically came out of Nietzscheism. And Nietzsche said that God is dead. But some of this stuff, if you look at the history of atheism, goes back to this guy named Darwin. The funny thing about Darwin and his cousin Galen, who basically started eugenics, the idea of eugenics was that there was a superior race. See, some of these ideas of the superior race came from Darwinism. Darwin was a major racist. People won't tell you that. But we've had Aborigines put in the Smithsonian Institution and played off as the missing link. We've had atheists propagandizing the idea that we can prove evolution, and we've seen many stunts put out there, and many pseudosciences over the years come up, and every time it's refuted, they go, well, we've got some new science now, and now let's argue about it. And it's nothing more than what the Jehovah's Witnesses do. When an objection comes up to their theology, they'll teach their people how to have some sort of answer back and forth. And so this really blows the credibility of the whole movement of Darwinism. There are even people who are true atheists or people who are scientists that don't believe in a God, that don't believe in evolution. Now, we're not talking about, and we have to qualify evolution. There is a type of evolution, a type of selection, but it's not proven that type of selection goes back to the original cell. They tried an amino acid experiment, and where they put the wrong gases together and got the wrong amino acids and say we created 2 amino acids. They did not create a chain of amino acids that replicate themselves like DNA. They did not. That was never created. And they said and basically the age of the universe being so old, they came up with this triangulation that's ridiculous, and they came up with the fossil record, which was based on circular reasoning. Now, I don't want to get into all the science of it, because you're going to go back and forth, and they're going to come up with, well, we have our scientific, and now science today, and now you can argue with our science, because our science has now changed to make our lie more compatible. But they have been lying, since the beginning. You see things like Piltdown, man. You look this stuff up, the history of atheism, or the history of the debate over evolution, and it's very politically motivated by these supremacists, by these people who actually are pushing the idea of having some men that are genetically better than other men. And if you look at the history of this, you can even look at Hitler. You could say, oh, Hitler was a Catholic. Well, the Catholic Church basically politically worked with Hitler. I don't trust the Catholic Church. Never did. I believe that they're rooted in the same things that way back that, we don't believe in the Catholic Church. The idea of Martin Luther, saying that the Jew, but Martin Luther was mad at the Jews because of the way the Jews act. And it's not all of the Jews, but there's a certain sect of Jews that and they've been hated for a long time. And I don't hate Jews. I love Jewish people. The Jewish people should not have done that. It's actually if you look at the history of this is the Jewish people themselves you know what? I don't want to go into all the propaganda. But what I want to do say is that the idea of the Aryan race, came from supremacists. And his doctors, Dr. Mengele and all the people he hired, were all people that came from a man named Galen, who was Darwin's cousin, where he started to make these genetic experiments on twins. Why? Because they were looking into gene science. And basically this materialism that Hitler believed in, these other people believed in, and basically it dehumanized everything. This dehumanization of people made it okay, since there's no God, and since it's all material and things are relative, and so that in the name of posterity, in the name of science, we can commit all sorts of crimes, especially since they're lower people. Now this is the history of atheism and the history of evolutionary science and genetic, where we got eugenics. Now you can look into this history very deeply. I know that many people are going to post their comments that are going to be nasty and snarky, but the truth is, when you look at it, the truth is that when all you have to do is look at the political push and the propaganda of evolution since its inception, that it was basically rooted in atheism, and you know the whole story. It's all propagandist pushed out by the government, and pushed out by governments that have an idea. New World Order. Many people know this. Many people will deny this. But let me speak about Christianity, because Christianity, I have mentioned, okay, 99% of Christians, okay, are not going to heaven. They're not saved. And people got all mad at me. But did you forget that Jesus said that wide is the way to the road is to destruction, and narrow is the way to salvation? And all these people that think that the way to salvation is by works, by being good enough to get to heaven, are not on the narrow road. They're on the wide road, because that's what everybody else is doing. All those people who trust completely and totally in Jesus Christ for their salvation are on the narrow road, which is narrow. So when I talk about 99% of the people who are in Christianity are not Christians, they're actually atheists. They actually are against God and don't even know it. They're against God, and they're against his Messiah. So, get this thing. Yeah, it's bigger than life. They're against God, and they're against his Messiah. And they don't know that they are. They think that they're following God, but then they're following their own works, which is basically Antichrist, which is basically what the world is like. The world it has been nasty and all in self-exaltation for a long time. People do not comport themselves civilly. People comport themselves like Alinskyites, these Saul Alinsky people, who are nasty, pushy, belligerent, and on both sides. I've seen the worst. I've seen the worst of things come out of Christians' mouths. You know, when they don't like your religion, which I don't believe in religion, I believe in Christ, but if they don't like your point of view, they get just as nasty as any Satanist out there. So their vehement hatred shows that they don't know the true love of Christ. And atheism's hatred just shows, in the history of it, just shows that they're against God too, although they are against God. They're not just not believing in God. If you're just not believing in God and if you're just not believing in God and you just have an opinion either way, that's a different story. But these atheists that come on here are not those type of people. These people who make these comments are not the type of people that say, oh, you don't understand atheists. They're just people that just, they just don't believe that there's a God. And why should you push them around? No, these are the people who read Saul Alinsky's book and are trying to push you and proselytize you and start fights with you, to draw you into a competition with them, to argue with them on all the Jehovah's Witness type points that they had, that basically was pseudoscience, that it just every time there was an objection, that they just found a new way to answer it, and a new pseudoscience that would shut everybody up and say, okay, now let's have a debate. Now that we have more pseudoscience behind it, we've got a newfangled way to measure the distance between stars, and that way is totally accurate. And we can tell you that it's accurate within pinpoints. And I'm like, well, if you have a triangulation technique, okay, and you're saying that it's very accurate, how did you measure how it was accurate? Well, we know that it's accurate by what? Well, we have scientific... Did you actually go out there and did you step off the distance between how many thousands of light years it is from the point that you measured? Like, if I'm going to give you a measuring system, right? And I triangulate a measuring system, and I actually take a measuring stick, and measure it. Then I can tell you how accurate it is, because I can actually measure it by actually going out there and running a line. So to tell me that the universe is this old and that old and how many light years, and oh, you don't understand science. You're just showing how stupid you are. You're showing, you know what I'm showing? I'm showing how propagandists are going to come up and be all sorts of belligerent and say that their science is now changed, and that we can beat creationists in the arena of science, because of course science is of man, and man is smarter than God. It's all a lie. It's all a smokescreen. It's always been a smokescreen. And a lot of people are proselytized and taken away from God by all these silly ideas. The truth is that all of these accusations you have against God, being a terrible God, and why would he do this and why would he do that, are all based on your understanding of thinking that somehow or another you're worthy of something, when we've all sinned and ran away from God. All you people who hate God okay, who were created by God, believe that you have some sort of rights when your life was given to you. You think that you're your own. You see, if you don't belong to yourself and you were created, then you have no right to say what your rights are. And if you've sinned, then God has every right to do what he does. And everybody will be like, well, that's not fair. I can get public opinion against it. And to tell you the truth, I'm not interested in public opinion. Because those who are going to find, the narrow people who are going to find the truth, it doesn't matter how many people that you try to get on your side, bandwagoning. The narrow road is always open to all those people that will actually know Christ for who he is. The one that showed us that the way to heaven is not by us trusting in ourselves, but in him. And the ones that have actually had their pride dropped down by understanding the love of Jesus Christ and that it's actually out there. And I'm going to preach the message, and everybody's going to come against it, but the problem is that you're not going to change anything, because God is going to have his will done. No matter whether you believe in him, whether you're against him, whether you're like the angels, or whether who you are, God is going to have his way, and he will, and in his church will never fail. Hell won't come against it. Atheists won't come against it. Christianity itself will not come against the power of Jesus Christ, the power of his love to save people and give them a hope in heaven. Because all you atheists who have your hope in utopia on earth are all going to perish and die. And you have no hope. And you're mad at this. Everybody on this earth is condemned to death because of our sins. So you're hoping in a better creation and taking all these people away. At the end of your life, it will all wind up to be vanity and futility. You will die. And if we die with a hope and you die without a hope, what's better? And if the truth is, and I believe the truth is that there is a hope, then we're better off than you anyway. Take care, and I hope you find the truth. God bless.